Hey guys, it's Miss Kinder. Oh my gosh, miss you guys so much. If I had known the last time I saw you guys that we'd be away from each other for this long, I would have said a different kind of goodbye to you guys because I had no idea that it would be this long that we'd be out of school. Um, if you're actually watching this, first of all, thank you. I'm recording this in my bedroom at home. Um, I wanted a chance for us to finish the sign of the beaver. So I wanted to go ahead and remember that? This book that we were reading? It's been a while. I wanted to do a little recap and then read a little bit more for you. Let you know also, if you have Amazon Prime, there is a movie version of the book. If you're interested, you can certainly check that out on Amazon Prime. It was something I was planning to show in class, and God willing, we'll get back to class and I can do that. But if not, I'm going to read a little bit to you so that you'll know what's happening with Matt and Etienne. So to recap, you remember that Matt had moved to Maine to settle some land for his family. His dad left to go back and get mom and the rest of the family and bring them to Maine. And in the meantime, Matt was left alone and he was nervous to be by himself. So he was counting down the days until dad would get back. He took in a stranger, fed him, and woke up the next morning to discover that the stranger had stolen his gun. So Matt's left with just fishing to be able to, maintain a food supply. He's starting to get kind of sick of eating fish, so he goes out and tries to get some honey out of a tree. When he does so, he gets stung very badly by bees, and some Native Americans find him and nurse him back to health, and it ends up being Etienne's grandfather who asked Matt to teach Etienne how to read. He wants him to be able to read English because they have been making some deals with the European settlers on their lands and those signing treaties, and they don't really understand the treaties because they can't read English, and some of these treaties have been broken. And so to prevent that from happening again, Etienne's grandfather asks Matt to, in exchange for food, to teach Etienne to read. And initially, Etienne is not about this. He is angry. He doesn't want to learn. He doesn't particularly like Matt. It's a whole thing. So Matt decides to try and read his favorite book, Robinson Crusoe, to Etienne. And Etienne takes great offense at the portrayal of Friday in the book. And Friday is Robinson's slave. And Etienne does not like the idea of slaves. That is not cool to him. So Matt and Etienne are not getting along. Matt's kind of trying. He wants to sort of earn Etienne's respect. He wants them to be I don't know, a friend, but he wants to be friendly with Etienne, but Etienne's not really having it. I don't think he trusts Matt. He was never on board with learning English, so he's just kind of doing this for his grandpa and not really because he cares about learning English. So I'm going to start reading chapter 12. That's where we left off, and I'll read a chapter per video, and they're short, so it won't take long. But I hope you'll follow along and learn what happens in this story. Chapter 12, Sign of the Beaver by Elizabeth George Speare. I must have a bow, Matt decided one morning. He was envious of the bow Etienne often carried behind his shoulder, and of the blunt arrows he tucked into his belt. Only the day before, Matt had watched him swing it suddenly into position and bring down a flying duck. You remember Etienne in a previous chapter also taught Matt how to make a snare so that he could catch animals too. Etienne had picked up the dead bird carefully and carried it away with him. No doubt the Indians would find some use for every scrap of bone and feather. Matt knew by now that Etienne never shot anything just for the fun of it. With a bow and a little practice, Matt thought now, he might be able to get a duck for himself. It would be a fine change from his usual fish. Matt is really sick of eating fish all the time. He had no doubt he could shoot with a bow. In fact, he had made them years ago back in Quincy. He and his friends had played at Indians, stalking each other through the woods and whooping out from behind trees. They had even practiced, half earnestly, at shooting at a target. How could he have known that someday he would have need of such a skill? He cut a straight branch, notched it at either end, and stretched tight a bit of string his father had left. Arrows he whittled out of slender twigs, but something was definitely wrong. His arrows wobbled off in odd directions and flopped on the ground a few feet away. He was chagrined. That means like kind of down in the dumps, a little irritated, when next morning Etienne walked out of the woods and surprised him at his practice. Etienne looked at the bow. "Not good wood," he said at once. "I get better." He was very exacting about the wood he chose. He searched along the edge of the clearing, testing saplings, bending slender branches, discarding one after another, till he found a dead branch of ash about the thickness of his 3 fingers. He cut a rod almost his own height and handed it to Matt. "Take off bark," he directed, and squatted down to watch while Matt scraped the branch clean. Then, taking it in his hands again, he marked off several inches in the center where Matt's hand would grip the bow. "Cut off wood here," he said, running his hand from center to ends. "Make small, like this." He held up one slim finger. Matt set to work too hastily. "Slow," Etienne warned him. "Knife take off wood too fast. Indian use stone." So Matt has a knife he's using to scrape the bark off of this tree limb, and Etienne says, "No, it's taking it off too fast. We use a stone. I want you to use that to scrape the bark off." Under the Indian's critical eye, Matt shaved down the branch, paring off the thinnest possible shavings. The slow work took all his patience. Twice he considered the task finished, but Etienne, running his hand along the curve of the bow, was not satisfied till it was smooth as an animal bone. So Etienne clearly has a very specific way that he does this job, and he wants Matt to follow that same process to get the arrows just right. "Need fat now," he said. "Bear fat best." "Will this do?" Matt asked, bringing out a bowl of fish stew he had left cooling on the table. Carefully, with a bit of bark, Etienne skimmed off the drops of oil that had risen to the surface. Oil and fat are essentially the same thing. He rubbed the oil from one end of the bow to the other till the bare wood glistened. Matt's frayed bit of string he cast aside. Instead, he set about making a bowstring as he had made the snare. Remember that? With long strands of spruce root. This took most of the morning as he patiently twisted the strands together, rolling them against his thigh to make them even and smooth. So he's rolling that root till it's nice and smooth. Finally, he tied one end to the notch in the bow and began slowly to bend the wood. So he's making the bow now. I said arrows earlier. I was wrong. He's making the bow for the arrows. The bow seemed to Matt to be as stiff as iron. It seemed impossible that it would bend, but slowly it yielded. Till the string slipped over the notch at the end, the bow was finished. "It's a beauty," Matt told him, filled with admiration at their joint handiwork. Remember, before we ever started reading this book, I showed you guys the picture of all the handmade tools that were made back in these times and how much pride people took in their tools, even things that we would consider just so simple and disposable these days. Back then, it was a big deal because they made all that stuff by hand. And that's what's happened with Matt here. And so he looks at his bow, and because he didn't just run down to Walmart and buy it, he made it himself. It means a lot to him, and he's taking a lot of pride in it. Etienne gave a grunt of satisfaction. "Shoot pretty good," he said. "One day make better. Indian take long time, leave wood many days till ready." Before he left, Etienne cut off 4 slender shoots of birch wood. "Best for arrow," he explained, marking off with his hands a length of about 2 feet. He left Matt to do the whittling for himself. Matt was delighted with the bow, but shooting it was another matter. It was not in the least like the flimsy thing he had first created. It took all his strength to draw back the string. When he released his arrow, it flew with astonishing power off somewhere into the underbrush, anywhere but where he had aimed it. So it's really stiff. He's pulling back really hard, and he lets it go, and it flies off, but not in the direction he thought it would go in. As fast as he could make new arrows, he lost them, but he was determined. This is resilience. We talk about that sometimes, right? He's not giving up. He's resilient. He's going to keep going. He pegged a target of birch bark against a tree and shot at it grimly, his arrows coming closer and closer with every day's practice. The heel of his hand was blistered from the stinging snap of the string. Etienne did not offer him any further advice, but when the root string began to fray, he brought with him one day a fine bowstring of twisted animal sinew, which would last for a long time. Okay, so instead of this root that Matt's used for the end of the bow, Etienne brings him this animal sinew, which would be like a ligament or a tendon that he's taken from an animal they've killed and turned into a string, and he's going to put that on the end of the bow. Using the new string, Matt could frequently nick the edge of his target, so it's giving him much better precision when he shoots his arrow now. Soon he promised himself the squirrels would have more respect than to frisk about so boldly over his head, which means Matt's planning on using the new bow to shoot some squirrels. Maybe have a little squirrel stew, little roasted squirrel. Okay, so that's it for today. That's chapter 12. Matt's got himself a new bow, courtesy of Etienne's handiwork and his guidance. And I'm assuming now that he's got a bow that maybe things are going to get more exciting as far as maybe encounters with other people or other animals. I don't know. I will do a recording of chapter 13 for you to check out whenever you'd like to. Please remember, you can message me on Schoology anytime you need something. I miss you guys so much. Hope you and your family are safe. I hope you're healthy. And I'm so pleased that you spent this time continuing on with your story with us, and hopefully I'll see you for the next chapter. Okay, bye guys.